Disclaimer: this story contains
Yeah.
mature themes intended for adult viewers.
Already know.
Viewer discretion is advised. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness where even the ticking of the clock felt too loud. I had just begun to drift into sleep when I felt the mattress shift beside me. My breath caught before I could even open my eyes, soft, hesitant movement, followed by the faint rustle of the blanket being lifted. My heart skipped, then raced, when I realized it wasn't just a dream. Warmth brushed against my side, closer than it had any right to be. I froze, torn between pretending to stay asleep and acknowledging what was happening. Then, as if the universe wanted to punish me for hesitating, her hand brushed mine under the blanket, deliberate enough to make me wonder, accidental enough to leave me questioning. I opened my eyes just slightly, and there she was. Her face was lit faintly by the moonlight slipping through the curtains. She didn't look away. Instead, her gaze locked with mine, a daring flicker in her eyes that held me captive. My lips parted, but no words came out. The silence between us was louder than anything I'd ever heard. "Too cold to sleep," she whispered, almost teasing, though her voice trembled just enough to betray her nerves. My chest tightened, heat spreading where her arm barely grazed against mine. I could feel every inch of the space shrinking between us, every inch charged, alive, impossible to ignore. I wanted to move, to say something, to draw a line, but the truth was, I didn't. Not yet. My pulse was hammering in my ears, louder than my thoughts, drowning out everything except the unspoken question hanging between us. She smiled, too playful, knowing, a little too bold, and in that single look everything shifted. The air grew heavier, my breath unsteady, and I knew that nothing about this night would end the way I had expected when I first closed my eyes. And then, she leaned just a little closer. Everything else stopped. The story of what happened next is something I'll never forget. The room was filled with silence, but inside me, a storm raged. That night wasn't just about the closeness under the blanket, it was about everything I had been avoiding, everything I hadn't admitted even to myself. My marriage had been steady on the surface, like calm water masking strong currents beneath. My husband and I played our roles, polite conversations over dinner, quick pecks on the cheek before work, the occasional smile that looked more like muscle memory than affection. We weren't fighting, but we weren't really living together anymore either. Our hearts had grown distant, and I didn't know when it happened, or if I had ever truly noticed until now. And then there was her. His daughter, now part of my world, though I never expected she would shake it to its core. From the beginning, she carried an energy that unsettled me. Bright, teasing, and unafraid to challenge me in ways he never did. There were moments when her laughter filled the room, and I caught myself smiling longer than I should. There were times when her gaze lingered, daring, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I dismissed them all as imagination, as loneliness making me see what I wanted. But that night under the blanket? There was no denying it anymore. I remembered the way her hand brushed mine in the kitchen weeks ago, casual but strangely electric. Or how she leaned too close when showing me something on her phone, her hair brushing against my shoulder, her perfume wrapping around me like a secret I wasn't supposed to keep. Every memory now replayed in vivid detail, feeding into the growing tension that neither of us spoke about but both of us felt. Yet, with every beat of attraction came guilt. I was her stepmother, bound by lines society had already drawn for me. To cross them was unthinkable, wasn't it? And still, my heart betrayed me, racing whenever she was near, slowing only when she left the room, leaving me with emptiness I didn't dare confess. That night, as we lay so close, I could feel her breath soft against my skin. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't name, innocence, daring, longing? Maybe all of it at once. My body screamed to move closer, my mind begged me to pull away. I stayed, trapped in the gravity of something I both feared and craved. The cracks in my marriage had left a hollow space inside me, and she had slipped into it without warning. I didn't know where it would lead us, but I knew one truth: nothing between us would ever be the same. And when her fingers brushed mine again, deliberately this time, I realized she knew it too. Jealousy has a strange way of slipping into the smallest cracks, even when you try to ignore it. I never thought I'd feel it, not in this way, not toward her. Yet, it struck me one evening when we were all together in the living room. She sat across from us, laughing at something her father said, her eyes bright and alive. But every so often, her gaze would flicker back to me. A secret glance, quick but heavy with meaning. My heart stuttered each time, and I hated myself for noticing. Or worse, for wanting it. When my husband leaned closer to her, showing her something on his phone, I felt an ache I couldn't name. It wasn't the closeness between them, it was the way she smiled, carefree, and I realized I wanted that smile directed at me, only me. The thought was dangerous, but it clung to me, making the air too tight in my lungs. Later that night, she found me alone in the kitchen. Her presence filled the room before she even spoke. "You were quiet tonight," she teased softly, tilting her head. I forced a smile. "Just tired." But she didn't buy it. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine with an intensity that made me look away. The space between us felt too small, her nearness pulling me into the gravity I tried to resist. "You don't have to hide it," she whispered. My breath caught. What did she mean? Was she teasing me, or confessing something I didn't dare voice? Her hand brushed against mine as she reached for a glass, and the touch lingered, too long, too deliberate. The weight of temptation pressed down on me, stronger than ever. Every glance, every whisper, every accidental touch had built to this moment, pushing us both closer to a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I wanted to run, but instead, I stood there, heart pounding, lips parted, heat rushing through me, waiting to see if she would take the next step. And from the way she was looking at me, I knew she just might. The house was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the walls and left no place to hide. My husband had gone to bed early, and suddenly, it was just the two of us again. I told myself to stay in the living room, to keep the safe distance, but when she appeared in the doorway, her eyes locking with mine, I knew it was already too late. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a teasing warmth that sent a shiver down my spine. I shook my head, clutching the throw blanket around me. "Not really." She stepped closer, every movement deliberate, the air between us tightening with every inch she closed. "Me neither," she whispered, sliding onto the couch beside me. The cushions dipped under her weight, pulling me subtly toward her. Our shoulders brushed, sending sparks through my body I could no longer deny. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The glow of the lamp lit her profile, the soft curve of her lips, the daring glint in her eyes as she turned to face me. I felt my chest rise and fall too quickly, my pulse a wild rhythm I couldn't calm. "Why do you always look away?" she asked suddenly, her tone half playful, half accusing. I swallowed hard. "Because I'm afraid if I don't," my voice faltered, the truth caught somewhere between confession and restraint. She leaned in, close enough for me to feel the warmth of her breath, her hand brushing against mine on the couch. This time, I didn't pull away. Her fingers curled just slightly, hooking into mine, and the world outside that moment disappeared. I knew what was happening was wrong, or at least it should have been. But in that suspended silence, it felt inevitable. Her lips hovered near mine, so close I could taste the electricity in the air. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. And then, a sound upstairs broke the spell. We froze, eyes flying open, hands still clasped, caught between desire and danger. The line we'd been tiptoeing along was gone now. We were standing on its edge, ready to fall. The sound upstairs faded, but the damage was already done. We sat frozen, breaths caught, our hands still dangerously close. I thought she would pull away, laugh it off, pretend it was nothing. But instead, she turned back to me, eyes blazing, more determined than ever. "I can't keep pretending," she whispered, her voice trembling but fierce. "You feel it too." "I know you do." My chest tightened. Her words hit like a spark to gasoline. The truth was out, spoken into the air where I could no longer ignore it. I should have denied it, pushed her away, reminded her of the roles we were supposed to play. But I didn't. My silence was its own confession. She leaned in, her forehead brushing mine, the closeness intoxicating. My heart hammered against my ribs, every breath shallow, every second charged with the inevitability of what was about to happen. Her lips were just a whisper away when, "Are you two still up?" The voice came from the staircase. "My husband." I shot up from the couch, my pulse skidding into panic. She recoiled, eyes wide, but not guilty, no, hers carried something more dangerous. Defiance. He stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes, oblivious to the storm he had just interrupted. "What's going on down here?" he asked casually, glancing between us. "Nothing," I said too quickly, the word sharp and brittle. My palms were damp, my face flushed with heat I couldn't explain. But she didn't stay silent. "We were just talking," she said smoothly, her gaze sliding back to me with a secretive spark that made my stomach twist. She was playing with fire, and I was already burning. His eyes lingered on me, suspicion flickering just briefly before he shrugged. "Don't stay up too late." He turned and walked back upstairs, leaving us in a silence heavier than before. As soon as his footsteps faded, I exhaled shakily. I expected her to back down, to retreat after the close call. Instead, she leaned even closer, her voice a daring whisper, "See? You can't hide forever. Not from me. Not from yourself." Her hand slid over mine with deliberate slowness, claiming it fully this time. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My body betrayed me, leaning into her warmth even as my mind screamed of danger, of betrayal, of consequences too heavy to bear. The twist was no longer that she desired me, it was that I wanted her too, so badly that denial felt impossible. The betrayal wasn't just of him, but of myself. Because in that moment, I knew, I was already too far gone. And when she pressed her lips just shy of mine, pausing only to let me make the choice, I realized the real question wasn't if I would fall, but when. The morning after was heavy, like the air itself carried the weight of what we hadn't said. The house was quiet, but not peaceful, more like the silence before a storm. I avoided his eyes over breakfast, stirring my coffee though I had no appetite. He noticed. Of course he did. "You've been distant," my husband finally said, his tone calm but edged with suspicion. My chest tightened. Before I could answer, she walked into the kitchen, hair messy from sleep, wearing that same unshakable confidence. She slid into the chair across from me, her gaze flicking up just long enough to send a chill through me. That spark of defiance, that secret only we shared, it was dangerous. "I'm fine," I muttered, but my voice betrayed me. He stared at me too long, his jaw tightening, like he was piecing together fragments he didn't want to believe. The tension followed us through the day, unspoken but suffocating. By evening, it finally broke. He cornered me in the bedroom, his voice raw. "Tell me the truth. What's going on with you two?" My heart pounded. I opened my mouth, but the words stuck in my throat. Denial felt impossible. The memory of her touch still burned on my skin. And then, she appeared in the doorway. She didn't hesitate. "She doesn't have to say it," she cut in, her voice steady, fearless. "I will. We're not pretending anymore." His face drained of color. shock, anger, betrayal, all flickered across his features in rapid succession. "You, what?" he whispered, as though the air had been ripped from his lungs. Tears stung my eyes, but I couldn't look away from him. "I never meant for this to happen," I said, voice trembling. But it did. The confrontation spiraled, raised voices, accusations, tears. He demanded answers I couldn't give, asked questions I didn't know how to face. And through it all, she stood her ground, her hand brushing mine like a silent promise. She wasn't letting me face this alone. Finally, he stormed out, the slam of the door echoing like a gunshot. The silence he left behind was deafening. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, tears spilling freely. The guilt was unbearable, but so was the relief of no longer hiding. She knelt in front of me, lifting my chin gently. "We can't undo it," she said softly, her eyes fierce yet tender. "But we can choose what happens next." I searched her face, torn between love and fear, desire and ruin. And even though the world around us was collapsing, I realized one truth: I didn't want to let her go. The consequences had arrived. The decision was mine. And this time, I wasn't sure I wanted to run from it. The storm had passed, though the echoes of it lingered in the walls of the house. For days, the silence between us was not the kind that frightened me anymore, it was the kind that slowly made space for truth. He was gone, his absence a wound but also a strange kind of freedom. And in that freedom, something unexpected had the chance to bloom. One night, I found her on the porch. The cool air carried the scent of rain, and the moonlight draped over her shoulders like silver silk. She looked up when I stepped outside, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. No teasing this time, no daring glances, just honesty. "I didn't mean to ruin everything," she whispered, her voice trembling in a way that broke me. But I couldn't keep pretending either. I sat beside her, our knees brushing gently, a small touch that felt like a universe unfolding. "You didn't ruin anything," I said, my voice barely steady. "Maybe you gave me something I didn't know I was missing." Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability beneath all her boldness. "You really mean that?" I nodded, my hand sliding into hers, this time without hesitation. The contact was simple, tender, and yet it carried the weight of everything we'd survived to get here. We sat like that for a long while, the world quiet around us, until she leaned her head against my shoulder. My heart slowed, no longer frantic but steady, sure. For the first time in so long, I felt at peace. "I don't know what the future looks like," I admitted softly, "but I know I want you in it." She lifted her head, her smile gentle and radiant. And when she leaned in, her lips brushing mine in the softest kiss, it wasn't forbidden anymore, it was healing. It was the promise of something real. The kiss deepened, tender but certain, sealing everything we had fought, lost, and found again. The chaos of the past no longer mattered. What mattered was that we had chosen each other, against all odds. And as the night wrapped around us, I knew that this, her hand in mine, her heart against mine, was the ending I had been waiting for all along. Not an ending, really, but a beginning.